Of our 30-plus conferences around D1 men's college basketball, we only have 2 that have yet to start their conference tournament. One of that changes today. The Mid-American Conference, the MAC, enters conference tournament week as well on this Thursday. The Ivy League, only a 4-team tournament. They will play quickly over the weekend as well. And DRS in the Mid-American Conference, in the true MAC, in my estimation, not the MAC, in Atlantic City, the top team is Akron. John Gross and his Zips have been sensational. They were a tournament team a year ago at a plus 145 price. Akron booked as the favorite to win the MAC tournament title.
You know what? You look at their schedule, too. They lose opening night in overtime to Arkansas State, quality program. They lose to St. Mary's. No shame in their game. Milwaukee, that's a tough one up for debate. Yale, good team out of the Ivy League. And then Princeton. After that, it's a shame they lost to Ohio on February 22nd, Ben, because they will be coming into this tournament as the hottest team in the country with the longest win streak out here. And it's a fun team to bet because they're really fast and their tempo adjusted is number 1 in conference play. But you know what's interesting about them? They play unbelievably good offense and defense here, not over-reliant on the three-point shot. They'll defend the three-point shot. They'll defend inside the arc. But how about this? In conference play, 60% from the field inside the arc. That means if you're playing with tempo, that's so many easy baskets, which what they're doing is getting out, running, getting the easy buckets, and not being over-reliant, as I said, on the three-point shot. It's a fun basketball team, and by far the best team in this tournament, as you see the price point at a plus 145. Now, granted, you're playing on a neutral court. Like versus like competition. You could lose a game, but for the fact that they only lost 1 conference game this season and they got blasted on the road against Ohio, maybe that's their biggest competitor where they sit at a plus 650 price, talking about the Bobcats in conference play. But I'm not betting against Akron. I think they're the best team through and through in the MAC.
And, Donnie, when you look at the numbers, really, there's a lot to like about what the Zips do. As you highlighted, they play at such a fast pace. They move the ball incredibly well. They take a ton of threes. It is a fun brand of basketball under John Gross this year. They played 18 MAC games. They won 17. They have won 18 of their last 19, to highlight Donnie's point, since a 7-5 start earlier in the year. They are a 25-win team. And when you look at every game they played in MAC competition this year, they were booked as a favorite except for one. That was a win against Kent State, who will enter with the second best price around the Mid-American Conference. And frankly, Donnie, when you look at the standings in the MAC, Akron 17-1. Kent State, that second best number. But it's actually Miami of Ohio with the second most conference win this year, 14-4, the record for the Red Hawks. They get underway today as well. 12 teams overall in the MAC, only 8 on your screen. Bottom 4 in the conference standings miss out on the conference tournament in Cleveland this week.
Yes, and that's just the way it's going to be at this point. By the way, the team that's leaving the MAC, and I guess they probably should be just saying they're kicking them out, is NIU, which usually is a pretty good basketball team in that conference. 2 wins on the season? But if we are lining up the favorites here, of course, it's going to be Akron, as we talked about. If you're handicapping the game, that's going to take place today. When does that start? 11 a.m. So again, this is the first one right off the bat, which if you're watching the show right now live, an hour and a half from now, you have live college basketball. And it's not just hey, send this team out here. That's a really good mid-major team. As you focus on, you take a look at some of the styles that make fights here, you have to like this too, because Akron on offense, their efficiency in conference play is 118.5, which is tremendous. But understand this, they don't really get to the free throw line, which means they're getting easy buckets in transition. But number 2, they're fantastic inside the arc. But understand this, 3rd most three-point shots in the conference, but they make them 3rd most in the conference. It's really a good matchup, particularly in Bowling Green's defense. Will let you shoot as many three-point shots as you want in this environment. This should be a walkover win right out of the gate, but also these teams aren't used to playing at 11 a.m. in the morning on a neutral court, so sometimes it is buyer beware, but usually the better team, the more efficient team, is going to win out.
A 12.5-point spread in favor of Akron against Bowling Green. Total 148.5. Again, Akron at a very up-tempo pace. They like to score. They like to display it on offense. Keep an eye on that total. Bowling Green is the 8th seed in this conference tournament. And then, DRS, when you think about what Akron has done, I mentioned it, 17-1 in conference play straight up, 17 of 18 games as a favorite. 7-10 against the spread because they often saw these hefty numbers. So just keep that in mind when you are betting the MAC tournament day by day. Elsewhere around conference tournament week, so much to break down. And Donnie, when you think about some of the best teams that we are going to see today at the high major level, the one seeds will be out there as well in the ACC, Big 12, and Big East. You talked about it at the very beginning of this show. These are the days that you love in college basketball. The opening round at the high major level, that's already through. Some of the best teams in these conferences, even if they're not a one seed, that they earn the bye through the opening round, they will be on display. These are the games that matter. These are the games that are significant, even as we saw on full display yesterday. These games are never meaningless. They have implications for teams trying to get into the NCAA tournament. Don't believe me? Ask Ohio State. Don't believe me? Ask Georgia. Don't believe me? Ask Vanderbilt. And now the long wait because you have left the committee in charge and your own fate out of your hands. These are the great days in college hoops, and it starts in under an hour and a half.
Yeah, can you imagine if it was like an exhibition bet at the end of the season? It's like, yeah, well, Duke won the regular season, so the ACC championship has no bearing if you win it or not. Like, no, you show up, and as long as you're playing, you understand that if we keep winning, even though we don't have a great regular season, we can punch a ticket into the dance. And there's a lot of pride from the opposite direction. Do you think Duke was like fantastic? Job, done. We won the ACC regular season, and it's no big deal if we meet up with North Carolina and they bounce us here because we're already in the tournament, and good for North Carolina because they can win and we can see them in March Madness. It's like, no, there's a lot of pride here. You want the sweep. You won the regular season. You want to win the conference championship. And then you want to go in the March Madness and win another one here. Hanging banners left and right. So more than that, where it's like, okay, the end of the rainbow and the pot of gold is the championship. You have pride on the line. You want to continue to win. You want to cement your legacy. And also, for some of those bubble teams, every single win matters, where it's like, oh, have we seen that before? Like, oh, we're in the tournament, and 2 days later, like, oh, no, everything just went against us. All these bubble teams continue to win and knock out automatic bids. Now we're in peril. Don't leave it up to chance for a Selection Sunday committee to tell you if you're good or not. If you keep winning, everything takes care of itself, you guys.
There's a great chance that Ohio State now is going to miss the NCAA tournament. So teams that maybe were on the wrong side of the bubble, a spot has opened up. Looking at you, North Carolina, continuing to handle business against the teams they are expected to beat, closing as a 10.5 point favorite yesterday against Notre Dame. Carolina wins by 20, dominant fashion. They get Wake Forest today. UNC, 5.5 point favorite. Another game they need to win to potentially set up a semifinal matchup on Friday against who? That would be the Duke Blue Devils. Another quad one opportunity in Charlotte for UNC. Even, Donnie, if you're not a team like North Carolina or the others we have mentioned, trying to earn a spot into the big dance, there is an idea of March momentum. We saw some of that magic with Delaware. We saw some of that magic with St. Francis, PA, a sub-500 team now into the big dance. And we have seen, even at the high major level, teams get hot at the perfect time, play their best ball. Paying attention to what's happened in the Big 12, right? Colorado, a 3-17 team in the conference in the regular season. 2 consecutive wins for Tad Boyle and the Buffs. Outright against TCU on Tuesday. Outright against West Virginia yesterday as well. Now they take on Houston today as a 16.5 point dog. So more than likely, that not going to go their way. But a lot of stakes for everybody involved in conference tournament week.
No doubt about it. You see that Iowa State and BYU, a fantastic game. And also, it's just being a college basketball fan and a sports fan at this time right now, as we told you. Like, yes, this week is great, but I'm telling you, today just might be the best day. Everybody involved, some teams that are bad get hot playing higher seeds. That's fun basketball. It is.
We'll talk about it with our coach, James Young, up next. What a time during conference tournament week in 3 of our 5 high major conferences around men's college basketball. The 1 seeds, the top seeds into the fold today. That's the ACC, the Big 12, and in the Big East tournament. JY here for a second consecutive segment, and we will go as fast as possible to hit on at least a few games from every high major conference tournament that we have. JY, let's start in the ACC. The 1 seed Duke, a 22.5 point favorite against Georgia Tech. Louisville takes on Stanford. Clemson against an SMU team desperate for a quad 1 victory. And, of course, North Carolina still trying to hunt down a spot in the big dance. Of those 4 games in the quarterfinal round in Charlotte, JY, which one has the most stakes?
It's UNC. Because if you look at a UNC team is 5-1 against the spread the last 6 games, and let's be honest, Ben, they looked really, really good the first half Saturday night versus Duke. They looked really good. And then, I don't know, I guess it struck midnight. So for me, that's the biggest game. They have to leave a lasting impression. They don't have the quad 1 wins. They got to win. They got to win impressively. And then they got to slay the Dragon tomorrow, which is going to be even more difficult. But they can't get to tomorrow unless they win today and win impressively. North Carolina minus points. Also, really quick, Duke, team total 82.5. I think they're going to push their pedal to the metal because they know who they got tomorrow as well.
Good stuff also. How about the Big 12 out there today? Outside of Colorado, somewhat of a surprise maybe taking on Houston. Not that great of a game, but Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas, Arizona, and Iowa State and BYU. What a contrast there. And you take a look at the spreads, -5.5, -1.5, +3.5. Fantastic stuff in the Big 12, Coach. What game is it for you today?
To me, it's Kansas. This team has been up and down all season, and we don't know which team we're going to get. So to me, it's Kansas. But also look at Iowa State. I think John Rossi reported there are 2 injuries. The guy, I think Gilbert's one of them. Another player, I forget who it is. Both are game-time decisions for today. That is going to move the market a lot if those 2 don't suit up. 2 scores, 2 of the top 3 scores, if I'm not mistaken, today for Iowa State may not play.
2 of the best guards in the Big 12. Keyshawn Gilbert been dealing with injuries all tail end of the season. Did leave for some time yesterday in the Cyclones' big win against Cincinnati. Tamin Lipsey, their point guard, the other guy who is questionable with some injury news. For an Iowa State team, Coach, we're just hoping to get healthy for a big run in the big dance. BYU has won 8 straight, by the way, to end out the regular season. Big East quarterfinal Thursday inside the world's most famous arena. And enter Rick Pitino and the Red Storm. St. John's double-digit favorite against Butler. Creighton, 2 seed in the conference against a DePaul team that knocked off Georgetown once again last night. Marquette and Xavier, huge game for the Musketeers and their NCAA tourney hopes. But JY, UConn, and Villanova. Anytime they meet up in Madison Square Garden, it is always a marquee matchup. What do you expect out of that tilt tonight inside MSG?
Fireworks. And if Villanova would have closed out this game up in Hartford a couple of weeks ago, we wouldn't be talking about it because maybe Villanova would be in. They need to win. So that is a huge game for Villanova. That's why I like them plus the points. Marquette's got to get going. Xavier needs to win to hold their tournament hope for life, especially if you have a case of Villanova winning and them losing. St. John's, look at Edgerford today. Over 8.5 rebounds at plus money. You have a dynamic offensive rebounding team in St. John's against a poor defensive rebounding team in Butler. That should be a lot of fun today at the Garden.
Let's go over to the Big Ten, which most people affectionately call the boring 10, because I don't see a game on this card that I enjoy. Coach, do you enjoy any of these games in the Big Ten today?
I mean,
this guy, it's this guy. What's up with this guy,
you
man?
know what he's doing.
Come on now. By the way, shout out to my hometown, Rutgers Scarlet Knights, for just going down in flames last night. But Ben and I have been talking about it. We got a ticket. It's the Purdue Boilermakers, and they got a favorable matchup against the Must-Bus in the 6-14 game. I do also like Illinois minus the points. Last time they played Iowa, won by 20. They look markedly better, Ben, since that 3-game losing streak they had a couple of weeks ago.
A lot of points probably in both of those games. Purdue, USC, Illinois, and Iowa. The pace will be up there. Oregon and Indiana. IU firmly in the NCAA tournament. One more statement win would certainly help Mike Woodson and company. Finally, JY, 30 seconds left. SEC tournament into round number 2. What's the best game on the slate?
It's Texas versus Texas A&M. If Texas gets a win, they're in the NCAA tournament. They need this game today.
The Lone Star Showdown now back in basketball. Texas, a huge victory over Vandy, trying to play their way into the big dance. The beauty of conference tournament week. JY, a fade to the break, a fade away to hour number 3, which comes away next. As of yesterday, all 5 high major conferences around the sport of college basketball in men's CBB fully in action in conference tournament week. And Donnie, as of this Thursday, 3 of those 5 high majors, ACC, Big 12, Big East, their top teams enter the conference tournament fold as well. 1 seeds across the board, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds. We've got some great action on this Thursday. Not quite in the SEC or the Big Ten, but we'll start with the Southeastern Conference, our most compelling conference all year long in college hoops. DRS, when you look at the docket in round number 2 on this Thursday in Nashville around the Southeastern Conference tournament, which one attracts your attention the most?
Usually you like to get those games from a betting standpoint for me. I want more wide open play. Like usually it doesn't get my attention when it's like if that game is supposed to be 65-60, there's usually not a lot of advantages that you like to take care of unless you're just looking for one really good defensive team and looking to say, you know what, I'm going to go with the team total under. Because particularly for me and throughout my betting landscape, the eyes usually train towards the over. How can this work out with these guys play decently? But as you saw yesterday, a lot of my plays were team totals under because they make sense. Neutral court, high pressure situation, game slows down in the second half, and really good defenses usually add up to more unders there. But if I take a look at the SEC, like Oklahoma and Kentucky, one thing we know, Ben, we ain't playing a lot of defense between those two. So then you try to look for those shot intricacies because neither one of these teams is going to chase you off the three-point line or defend it all that well. Did I handicap and go through what I actually like? No, but if I look at the schedule, which the SEC doesn't have a lot for me to love today with these teams, but if I had that one game at 9:30 p.m. tonight that I might be able to analyze for some fun and wide open looks, it's probably Oklahoma, Kentucky for me, Ben.
161.5 DRS is that total. Oklahoma, a big win yesterday against Georgia. OU battling for a bubble spot come Sunday. So is their most bitter rival in Texas against its in-state rival and conference mate once again, Texas A&M. Texas pulling off a slight stunner. It was basically a pick-em yesterday against Vanderbilt, moving to 2.5 in favor of the Doors in their home city of Nashville. Texas looked thoroughly dominant in that matchup. The Longhorns were a top 25 team back in the preseason. It has not been an overly successful year for Rodney Terry and his Horns, but a big opportunity against A&M today with some rivalry fodder thrown in there. 6.5-point spread in favor of the Aggies, who did end out the regular season with a victory in their final week against Auburn, but we're not playing great basketball prior, trying to build that momentum as of right now. The most intriguing game for me, DRS, in the SEC, Missouri and Mississippi State. 3.5-point spread in favor of Mizzou. I told everybody yesterday, Mississippi State gets an easy one. Easy one against the bad LSU team that was bottom of the barrel within the SEC. And they made good on it. They won by 29, 91, 62. I think that the Bulldogs are a fraudulent team. I think that Mississippi State is bolstering a lot of resumes. They are not worthy of doing so within the SEC. That will probably get some of those teams at large consideration in just 4 days from now. Give me Dennis Gates and the Tigers. And more importantly, Donnie, give me the total. Bet it last night as soon as it opened up, 153.5. It's now 155 and a hook.
By the way, see the pen right here? Might be getting a click on the show coming up in about, 30 minutes at this point. Why? Because Missouri's offense, man, looking like they fit in like a glove out there versus Mississippi State. Why? Number 3 in conference play at volume from three-point range, Missouri. How about Missouri? Number 3 in conference play at knocking down the three-point shot at 38%. Mississippi State's defense, there's 16 teams in the SEC. 15th at defending the three-point line. 15th at chasing you off the three-point line. Ooh, maybe Missouri, a little team total action here could be in there. It really could. I'm liking where you're going with this total. And also, flip it over to the other side. Mississippi State, not a great three-point shooting team. Will they shoot it? Yes. But look at the surge of where their points come from. Number 1 in conference play, 51% of their total offense coming from inside the arc. Number 5 at giving up points inside the arc, it's Missouri's defense. They play at a fast tempo, Mississippi State. So not relying on the three-point shot and getting out and running for extra points here, you might be on to something for this total because the matchup makes sense. These two teams fit together here, and I like what I see.
Missouri has gone over in its final 7 games of the regular season. So maybe does that trend come to a close? We shall see. But DRS, we're not even talking like over totals of 132.5, 144 in a hook. In all 7 of those games, we saw at least 161 points combined for Mizzou and its opponent. In its last 4, at least $170 plus. We're talking some points today because Chris Jans, normally known for his defensive outputs, not this year's Bulldogs team. Let's get to the ACC, DRS, the number 1 team in the country, the number 1 overall seed in Charlotte, the Duke Blue Devils into the fold, 22.5-point favorite against the Bees of Georgia Tech. Now, I'm not sure I'd lay it, but there's a reason that Duke is favored by that. Duke, at least a 6-point favorite in all 20 ACC games this year. They won 19. They covered in 14, 14-6 against the spread with an average margin of victory of how many points per game? 21.7, thus that big line.
Yeah, it's tough. It's not a perfect match for what I like to look at, but the one thing we do know is Duke's a perfect match, it feels like, for everybody. It doesn't maybe matter where they play them, they have the matchup, because if you're great at rebounding on defense and playing great defense, then great on offense and great rebounding on offense. So even when you do miss, you get the rebounds back. But understand this, Duke's the best three-point shooting team in the ACC at almost 40% in conference play. Why does that line up? 14th in the ACC out of 18 teams. How about this? Chasing you off, that's Georgia Tech. Everything should be available on offense for the Duke Blue Devils. Here's the only question that we have sometimes, because I ask this to myself. If Duke understands that the goal is to win this tournament, you're playing on back-to-back days. If you're up 25 points with 5 minutes to go, does that mean Cooper Flagg's getting some extra reps in at the end? No, it does not. So you leave a little bit to up for desire. If Duke is going to blow Georgia Tech out, for me, Ben, it's not Duke up by 4 points at the break. So you know where I go. When you have a team that you can stretch, you're going to get an honest effort in the first half. No matter how many points you're up, you will try to extend that lead. Maybe it's a first half for Duke, which makes the most sense against Georgia Tech. They should win. But again, the question isn't, does Duke beat Georgia Tech? Is they blast them by 20-plus points. I would say they're probably up 15 points at the break, and then they cover. I don't want to leave it up in the air and say, hey, the final 3 minutes when the backups come into the game and blow it, and there's a 14-2 run by Georgia Tech.
And, Donnie, that's what I did yesterday with North Carolina, understanding the purpose for Carolina in Charlotte for the ACC tournament. Now, they covered every number as they blew out Notre Dame by nearly 20. UNC today, 5.5-point favorite against Wake Forest. We were talking about this game off air just in commercial break discussing. You think this could be a potentially good matchup for Steve Forbes and the Demon Deeks, maybe playing spoiler to UNC's tournament outlook. How come?
Yeah, you take a look here. Let me just get some of the statistics up on the screen. Once again, it comes down to just some of the matchups that you take a look at. Wake Forest's defense is very good at the three-point line, which means they're going to defend it at about 30%. However, they will let you shoot the three-point shot. But North Carolina, Ben, not built on the three-point shot. We know that. Can R.J. Davis rise in fire times? That's not really his go-to, but he does have some success. But then you take a look at where you want to score your points from if it's UNC. Sixth in conference play at point distribution in conference play, about 52% of their points coming from there. However, Wake Forest defense, very stingy inside the arc. So if UNC pulls up and knocks down rainbow three after rainbow three, there's nothing you can do. But Wake Forest's defense actually matches up fairly well with what UNC wants to do. Now, Wake Forest on offense, not that great, and you understand that. But that's not really the focal point here for me. Understanding this, Wake Forest can steal points from the free throw line, but the matchup's going to be where Wake Forest can actually play defense and do things that frustrates North Carolina. So I'm not saying I'm calling it an outright victory, but this isn't a great matchup for UNC where it's like just overpower them. They're going to have to do things they don't like to do in order to win this basketball game.
The Bigs come up on the other side of the break. Big Ten, Donnie, not all that interested. I'll give a few thoughts on those games on this Thursday in Indianapolis. Big 12, Big East as well, and a couple of other looks for the rest of your Thursday slate in college hoops. All of that on the other side. Donnie, we're less than 20 minutes away from the start of conference tournament action on this Thursday. Akron and Bowling Green in the MAC tournament. John Gross and his Zips, a 12.5-point favorite at the top seed in that conference tourney, and the favorite to cut down the nets to head to March Madness once again and the big dance. Plenty more around college hoops next. All right, let's start in the Big Ten because Donnie Rightside doesn't have a ton of thoughts on our 4 games in Indianapolis today. First one up, though, DRS, in my estimation, 8-9 matchup between Oregon and Indiana, the most impactful. IU trying to make sure it solidifies its NCAA tournament resume and does not have to wait. A win over Oregon will do just that. The Hoosiers should be in regardless, even if they lose today. They're a 2.5-point dog against the Ducks. But a victory, and Mike Woodson is leading Indiana in his final year at the helm in Bloomington to the big dance.
Yeah, no, look, I like to kid about the Big Ten a lot of times because you just think about that old school like football mentality, low scoring, same in basketball. You got some high scoring games today, which I do think adds some intrigue. And if there's one team I do cheer on, it's Purdue, just because I like the style of basketball that they play. ultra efficient on offense, love the three-point shot, get after it there. They take on USC today, and I think their matchup is very good for them, particularly on the defensive side of things. USC wants to score down low. They're very stingy there. They'll give you as many three-point shots as you want, which, again, USC makes a decent amount of them but doesn't shoot a ton of them. I just think Purdue also, you see that line, 9.5. Ooh, I don't know if I can do that. You also look at a double overtime game the day before, and Purdue is better. That also screams Purdue should be up at the break. Or you might think that USC might have that surge in them in the first half and then dying out in the second half. But I do think Purdue wins that game by double digits over USC today in a fun one.
Could set up a really, really good path for both Illinois and Purdue moving on. Purdue a victory today. They get the 4 seed in Michigan, who has dropped 3 straight to end out the regular season. Illinois wins. They get the 3 seed in UCLA. Should be very exciting stuff in the Big Ten tournament. All right, let's go Big 12 tourney now as well. We are on to the quarterfinals. Thursday in Kansas City, which means 1 seed Houston. They enter the fold today. 2 seed Texas Tech. 3 seed Arizona. And DRS, the most compelling game in my estimation, BYU, the 4 seed, and yet catching 3.5 points against Iowa State. Just 2 weeks ago at Hilton Coliseum, we saw this matchup, went to double overtime, got us to an over. Iowa State, though, dealing with some injury issues again. Taman Lipsey, their point guard, Keyshawn Gilbert, one of their leaders, both listed as game-time decisions. Great show, by the way. Game-time decisions ahead of this matchup in Kansas City.
That's a tough one. You tell me I get a full-gas Iowa State team. I love this team. I've been telling you that for the past 2 weeks. Them and also Texas Tech out of the Big 12 have my eyes. But if you're down multiple starters or they're injured at this point, there are decisions that you have to make, because is it most imperative that you make a run in the Big 12, or understanding that you get a week off and you don't want to have these guys get that extra strain on their body for the big prize, which is the March Madness dance? And BYU, no strangers to loving the three-point shot. Iowa State will let you shoot the three-point shot, and if that three-point shot is going down, that's going to be an issue. But again, it's not home court advantage for BYU. It's neutral site. You're asking for the 3-ball to go down. I still lean towards Iowa State, but the good part about this is we'll know in just a short time. I think it's a 12:30 tip here, Eastern, of who those starters are going to be for Iowa State. So for me, holding off until we know exactly who's on that court, that's a big advantage today between BYU and Iowa State.
It is indeed the first game today in KC. BYU catching 3.5 points. This Cougars team in its first year under Kevin Young playing great basketball right now. They end the regular season winners of 8 straight, covering in 7 of 8. Not their final one against Utah. They were a 12.5 point favorite, still won that game by double digits. Other games around the Big 12. Kansas had to go to OT last night against UCF, but the Jayhawks did end their regular season in the fog with a victory over Arizona, who started off Big 12 play 11-2 and then dropped 5 of its final 8. The Cats also hoping to start to play better basketball. Baylor is going to be a tournament team more than likely. Not playing all that great, did hammer K-State yesterday. Texas Tech 5.5 point favorite. And Colorado has pulled off a couple of upsets so far in KC, Mo. Now they're a 17.5 point dog against Houston. Big East quarterfinal Thursday as well inside Madison Square Garden. First game up, St. John's 12.5 point favorite against Butler. Creighton 11.5 point favorite against a DePaul team. And Donnie, that second game on this Thursday afternoon, incredibly intriguing. Xavier, an underdog ever so slightly against Marquette. If the season ended right here, right now, no bid stealers, no tremendous moves throughout the rest of conference tourney week, Sean Miller and his Musketeers would be dancing. But they're not trying to leave it up in the committee's hands if they can pull off a big one against the Golden Eagles today.
Yeah, you know what this might come down to, because they're two pretty evenly matchups, as you see by the spread itself there. But take a look at this. Xavier in conference play, number 1 at getting to the free throw line. How about Marquette? Number 11 out of 11 teams at getting to the free throw line. Sometimes you need to steal some of those smaller advantages. That's a big-time advantage for Xavier if they can take advantage of the free throw line today.
We will see how it works out for them. Again, we are starting in 10 minutes. Akron, Bowling Green, first game, 8-10 action right after that. Maybe you forgot the name Robbie Avila. Well, he plays for St. Louis. They're getting underway in Atlantic 10 action as well. Do you remember who that is? The
the big guy with the glasses, right? Yeah,
for Indiana State. Now plays for SLU following his coach there to St. Louis. DRS, any other games that we look at here? Some more notable around the Thursday slate. Great one in the Mountain West. basically a pick 'em between San Diego State and Boise State. The Broncos trying to hunt down an NCAA tournament at-large berth. Colorado State now the 2 seed in the Mountain West tourney, 5.5-point favorite. Utah State, UNLV, Akron, as we shared, now a 12.5-point favorite. Miami of Ohio, by the way, 5.5-point favorite. They're the 2 seed in the MAC, 14 conference wins. And again, CUSA action. Kennesaw State, slight favorite against New Mexico State.
Or we focused here down at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas, down there for the American Conference with Temple and Tulsa today. I did see a designation tag of questionable for Jamal Mashburn Jr. Probably missed the last, 10 games or so for Temple, but they're favored to win today. I like those teams. Can you get on a run and your best player coming back? We don't know if he's actually coming back for the tournament, but those are the intriguing things that I like to take a look at as well. Sort of that lower level competition when everybody's focused so much on the high majors. Injury information at this time of year is absolute king. See if you can find some of those gold nuggets if you do get some of these key players back.
3.5-point spread in favor of the Owls in plenty of great games. Big West Conference tournament action that will highlight on the other side. We await UC San Diego entering the ring. DRS, have a great time on the money line. I am sure plenty of college basketball handicaps coming the radio listeners' way. We continue here on TEL next. Let's keep diving through a monumental Thursday during conference tournament week in college basketball. Exactly 1 week away from the start of the round of 64 in the men's NCAA tournament. In my estimation, the 2 greatest days on the calendar each and every season, sports or otherwise. Round of 64, Thursday and Friday. Next week, that is it. But a lot to figure out. Until then, the remainders of conference tournaments, and of course, on Selection Sunday. 48 games, 48 D1 men's college basketball games that start in just about 5 minutes in MAC action, A10 action, and all the way through 11:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight when the final games on this Thursday tip. We're talking 14-plus hours of college basketball in a row on this Thursday. That is indeed a beautiful sight. Let's go back to some of the other notable games from this Thursday. If I'm not mistaken, and producer Joe Frizo, please make sure we clarify. No tickets to the NCAA tournament at stake. No conference championship games on this Thursday, but we do have, thank you, many quarterfinal and semifinal games as we dive even deeper throughout conference tournament week. A lot of great action in the Mountain West tourney. San Diego State and Boise State in a game that is basically a pick'em. If the Broncos can win, should be a quad 1 victory for Boise State, would do a lot to bolster that NCAA tournament resume. There was a chance on Saturday night that Boise State was going to be the 2 seed or very high up in the Mountain West Conference tournament in Las Vegas, but Colorado State went into Idaho and pulled off the upset over Boise State. CSU now a 5.5-point favorite against Nevada. Top team in this tournament, that is New Mexico. First regular season crown in more than a decade. Richard Pitino and his Lobos, 15.5-point favorite today. That tournament played in Las Vegas. Of course, Richard's father, Rick, the 1 seed in the Big East tournament with St. John's. They're a double-digit favorite against Butler. Let's talk some of that high major conference tournament action as well. And I do want to start in the Big East because, man, what a game we have tonight in the world's most famous arena inside Madison Square Garden. 2 great programs, 2 very recognizable programs in college hoops battling it out tonight, UConn and Villanova. Villanova yesterday taking care of business, as you would expect the Cats to do against Seton Hall. But that's just step number 1. If Villanova has any hope, any outside hope of making the NCAA tournament, they need to beat UConn. They need to win their semifinal. More than likely, they need the automatic qualifier out of the Big East, but at least getting to conference title Saturday inside the Mecca would make things rather interesting. A 6.5-point spread in favor of UConn. And again, I do think it bears repeating. We've said it a few times. Dan Hurley's Huskies during that first national championship run in 2022-23 was not overwhelmingly dominant in the Big East. They were 13-7 in the regular season, did not win the tournament title. That was Marquette that year in 2023. Last year, a different story. but still 13-7 in regular season action. UConn this year 14-6, trying to play their best ball at this moment. They should beat Villanova. They're a 6.5-point favorite tonight. We'll see if that comes through. Great game between Xavier and Marquette, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Again, the Musketeers, if the season ended right now and the committee had to release a bracket in 2 hours, Xavier would be in. But you want to make sure you stay in and you don't leave it up to fate or chance or any bid stealers out there. They're a 2.5-point dog against the Marquette team that saw its fair share of struggles down the final 2-3 weeks or so of the Big East regular season. Big Ten tournament, again, Indianapolis, just round number 2. Our top 4 teams still waiting with the double bye into conference quarterfinal Friday as well. But the first game at noon, Indiana, Oregon, a huge one. This Hoosiers team is playing different, whether it's the resolve in the buy-in for their skipper in Mike Woodson, or Mike Woodson saying, F it, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to structure things the way I want. Indiana playing such better basketball. Wisconsin gets Max Klesmit back. That's huge to have their leader back on the floor. I like some points against this gritty Northwestern team. Illinois and Purdue now both double-digit favorites. Great day in the SEC. Great day in the ACC. Huge one between North Carolina and Wake Forest around 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's a must-win, can't lose for UNC. They lose, they're not getting to the NCAA tournament. And, of course, a stellar Thursday in the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. So much great stuff. Let's do it again tomorrow, huh? 8 a.m. Eastern time.